Energy and intention, and that's it. Honestly, I shit you not. If you pay attention to your compost will kind of talk to you back, and you get a sense of whether it's wet, whether it's dry, whether it's happy, whether it needs to be turned, whether you should keep adding to it, whether you should add another pile. But if you have this kind of energy and intention, like, oh, this is gonna be the best compost I have ever made, you know, and you kind of put that in, it's not just a placebo effect. You make good compost, you suddenly start thinking about, can my pile breathe? If it's hot, it needs to breathe from the bottom and it needs to go up. So what's on the bottom of your pile? Have you staged it on a pallet? Do you use, you know, larger sticks for the bottom and pile on that? Or is it all clumped together and it can't breathe and you're getting anaerobic pockets where you get that funky smell on the bottom? Does a bear shit in the woods? This goes back to what I said about terroir. Yes, it does. And around here, they used to eat salmon and then they would poop in the woods. Goes back to my idea about using crustacean products in this area. There's a genetic base herd of animals that covers in each area, and there's a natural landscape and ecosystem around us. So we're looking at, what do things grow around here? How do we adapt to the rhythms? If we're in Sonoma County, we kind of have this wet season. We got this brutal dry heat, but you're developing a system, both how you build your soil and then what and how you plant and you approach it based on the system, because honestly, the ecosystem goes on without you. You know, you see all these guys and, you know, you can do light dep and you can do this and you can do hydro and you can do everything like that, but, you know, nature's always strong. I also put IMOs on the bottom. Anybody familiar with IMOs? We live in a world of acronyms. Indigenous Microorganisms basically means there's tiny things flying all around that are indigenous. And some of it's the work of, well, it's become more and more popular with the work of Dr. Cho and this whole idea of Korean natural farming. But it's saying, okay, what's indigenous about here? And harvesting the local microorganisms and saying, how can we get these microorganisms to reproduce and introduce them to our garden? Because they're gonna help balance out the plant system and make the plant fundamentally stronger. Now, I keep talking about the plant's immune system and making it stronger because I don't have time to break down into the concepts of systemic acquired resistance or SAR and how it affects the phenols and the approach of the plant and its ability to do this and that. But I'll simplify it, right? Healthy plant, healthy food, healthy soil. So the big picture, again, understand this concept that the soil feeds the plants and the plants feed living beings. And how are you gonna do it? And when somebody goes out and they come to Baker Creek and they get an heirloom seed, right? They got this wonderful seed and they've figured out this garden design and it's beautiful and I'm gonna do this organic and the family's gonna get into it and we gotta buy stuff for the raised beds and let's go. And so we go to Home Depot because that's where you go for lumber and, well, forget the fact you got pressure treated issues and this, that, or the other, but then you're like, organic choice, there's the potting soil and it even says organic on the bag. It's even got an R after it, right? Anybody buy Organic Choice? Okay, Organic Choice is not organic and you do have a choice. It's made by Scott's Miracle-Gro. Their claim to fame, and the reason it's $5 at Home Depot is their kind of claim to fame internal of the corporation is they never have to ship a bag more than like 200 miles. So what they do is they set up local populations and they grab all the green waste and everything that gets ground up in every single bag and all the landscape clippings from the golf courses and everything else. And that's a good 55% of the recipe. And just to kind of flush it out and you make a whole lot of money this way, you know, that sewage treatment plant and the water treatment plant with all the pharmaceuticals and the sludge left over, they got to pay somebody to get rid of that. So they're like, hey, pay us. We'll take that in. That's a good 45% of our product. Throw some bark in there, fluff it out, call it Organic Choice. Right? California was the first state that said, you can't call that organic. They said there's an R after it, it's a brand name, it's not a product claim, you can't do anything about it. We're Scott's Miracle-Gro and your lawyers suck and you're under budget. Right? So CDFA said, yeah, you're right. We can't win, but we'll be back. We'll be back. We're gonna try to crack down on this, what you can claim something is organic. So anyhow, just be aware of what you use and what you put into it, because you are what you eat. Last thing there is understand that you are what you eat concept is a question of nutrition. And this kind of goes back, I like alternating between this biological side of things and this dynamic side of things. But Steiner mentioned back in 1924, and he said, well, the problem is you're growing food in ground that's devoid of soil. Part of this was the war came along, they manufactured all these compounds, the war ended, they're like, how can we get rid of this stuff? We'll sell it to farmers, right? Synthesize nitrogen, bring along urea and all, but then pests come out of everybody. Oh, and everybody started monocropping right around that time as well. But he said it's skeleton food. It looks like a tomato, it smells like a tomato, it has all the characteristics of a tomato, but it's empty, it's devoid. And it's not just the nutrients, and now we're finally getting technology and spectrometers that can measure nutrient density of food, and we're seeing a lot of this, and we can measure the beneficial compounds in the food. But he talked about it as like energy, life, that there's this life in the soil that puts life in the food, and if you eat healthy living foods, you're more of a healthy living individual, and it affects your critical thinking. And he said if people eat food devoid of all this, that's just skeleton food, you're gonna have diseases, and you're gonna have mental illnesses, and you're gonna have cancers by the turn of the century. And those are gonna be the two greatest problems plaguing mankind, is cancers and mental illnesses. And all we have to do is just look around anywhere, look at a school, unhealthy kids, you know, not through any fault of their own, because, you know, it's really hooking this generation. And the garden industry has a lot of responsibility for this, because the garden industry neglected an entire generation. And now all of a sudden, you've got a generation of parents that are like, I never learned how to garden. And you got a bunch of kids that'll like pull a carrot out of the ground and eat it without taking the dirt off it, because they didn't realize that's what a carrot's supposed to taste like. So as you walk around here and you see any of these people doing school gardens and any kind of education for that, please support it, please look out for it. There's a lot of people doing a lot of really, really good work, because if we can just get one generation that's kind of healthy, understands the importance and role of food and not synthetic agriculture, but organic agriculture, a lot of this stuff will kind of fix itself. So that's Malibu Compost. Again, we make compost. My whole thing is, yep, we're in the biodynamic garden. You need to buy compost. You need a top dress. You want to make teas. We're all here for you. But by next year, you shouldn't be using more than 25% of whatever compost you had to buy the year before. Unless you're on a patio, in an apartment complex, not on the ground floor, and then I'll let you get away with it. All right? So make your own, have fun with it, don't get intimidated by it. You know, we live in a state that's finally taken a stab at what the word organic means as far as it pertains to soil, and most people don't. It's in the other market. Most states treat organic soil product as something that's based on the carbon molecule. So it's got the C in there, it's good for me, you know? But for 15 degrees, it was over 135 degrees. So 15 days later, you know, according to the NOP, you've cooked out, I don't know, you've cooked out everything, but you can find pharmaceuticals, you know, you can find anything else that goes down our drain. I mean, this is it. I don't want to knock everything. It's just a matter of like, we never used to eat what we used to eat. We never used to pour down the drain what we used to pour down the drain. We never used to accumulate these levels of toxicity. So that's why you know, people are like, I've been using this for years. And I'm like, yeah, 10 years ago, I'm sure it was great. You know, it's just not, it's not what it was. You know, you look at a Big Mac from 10 years ago, it still looks like a Big Mac, you know, that's scary. And I used to have some of those free Monopoly coupons for a Big Mac, and I've eaten it. I'm like, a little concerned. But I've eaten my share of compost, so I'm all balanced. Listen, I got to run. The guy's doing raw foods after me. We already talked about it. He's going to chase me out. We have the biodynamic garden. Ask questions. Feel free to come by. And happy composting.